Hello everyone, Movie Cuban here. Um, I know it's been a while since I've done a video, and the reason for that actually has to do with this witch doctor that you see here on the screen. Because, and there is so much metaphorical egg on my face right now that I admit that my lack of videos has kind of stemmed from a bit of guilt, really, pertaining to in one of my past videos, and I think on my live stream on Twitch, which I'll put a description to in the link to this video in case you ever wanna come and watch me. But for the first couple of weeks in the season when I was working on my Thorns Crusader, who I'm gonna do another video for in a little while. But I was absolutely livid about the Legacy of Nightmares set, the 2 ring set bonus, where every ancient item that you have, you get 100% increased damage and 4% damage mitigation, basically. And my biggest problem with it was that with how much work had gone into revamping the sets, I was feeling kind of agitated that even when I'd go through the trouble of finding the set and farming up the gear to play like the builds that people like Riker or Anthony Evans or J-Mac were showing, the most noticeable thing and the thing that kept irking me is that the set bonuses, no matter how powerful the set, no matter if you got all ancients on your set and whatever, and you got all the perfect items to synchronize with that set, and they were all ancient, you still couldn't do as high of greater rifts as you could do with the Legacy of Nightmare set, with just randomly throwing whatever legendary that you felt like onto your character. And so it took a couple weeks of me, well actually it took like almost a month into the season here for me to decide that I would see what it was all about. I would see what people were so gung-ho about when it came to the Legacy of Nightmares set. And I figured the character that I wanted to test out Legacy of Nightmare on, basically, was a seasonal witch doctor. And so I deleted one of my non-seasonal crusaders who I never used, and I made this witch doctor, and I have spent oh god, it's been at least 2 or 3 weeks now, and I have just spent every moment of my free time in between me studying or being in classes or working out or all the other things that I do in a day, and I have been on this witch doctor farming for a year to run Legacy of Nightmares. And I'm still not perfect. A lot of my gear isn't rolled the way I would like, maybe. And I'm still lacking 2 ancient legendaries in the form of a ring and my boots currently. But even with that being said, I've finally broken my plateau of greater rifting, and what I mean by that is my characters, whether through my own personal noobishness or just my lack of capability in their playstyles, I was continually incapable of transcending past like rank 60 greater rifts. Like even when it came to my Ina monk, who is who was, I should say, my strongest character in my roster, he was still having trouble going higher than like I think it was 59 in the greater rifts. Like as soon as I tried to go to 60, my monk would just crumble. And it was a really frustrating time. But so I was like, I'll try out the Legacy of Nightmares. So I farmed up the gear, and I've come before you all today because I want to talk to you about what seems to be one of the most popular builds I've seen for the Witch Doctor, both seasonally and non-seasonally. And I say this because there's 3 builds right now that seem to be alright with Witch Doctor. And I believe the 3rd strongest right now is Helltooth, followed by the build I'm running, which is Legacy of Nightmare. But I'm running the Toxic Hound build as opposed to the Firebats build that you see right here. Can I find anybody? Oh, here's somebody using the Gargantuan version. Is anybody running zombie dogs? Am I behind in the meta? Is that what I'm seeing here? Huh. Looks like Gargs are pretty popular here on the leaderboard. Was not expecting that. Huh. Well, anyway. So, according to what was popular to what I had seen, and from what I was talking to people about, Legacy of Nightmare seems to have taken over the leaderboard. Like, Helltooth was on there for a while, I remember, but it seems like Legacy of Nightmare has just shown its utter dominance, which for me seems like kind of a problem now. I think we've reintroduced the very balancing problem that Diablo was trying to fix, that Blizzard spent all the time leading up to this patch trying to fix. But I don't think it's a problem with the ring set themselves. Like, the ring themselves doesn't seem overly overpowered. So I'm thinking maybe it's just something to do with difficulty versus damage mitigation on your character. And I attribute Legacy of Nightmare's popularity to it's just that breath of fresh air. Like, we all got really tired of sets in 2.3 where the meta was you choose a set for your class and you build entirely around that set, and it took away that creativity that we who have been playing since vanilla used to really enjoy in making our own builds and being able to make them somewhat viable. And if they weren't viable for like competitive play, at least it was your build, you know? Like, you were behind it, it was a play style that your personal preference shaped. And so with Legacy of Nightmare, we're kind of getting to see that again, and I'm kind of happy about that. I'm not too happy that my build seems to be less popular than the Gargantuan build, given how much time I put into trying to make the build, but it's not it's not too much of a deal breaker because I actually really like the current playstyle that I'm using. But I've been blabbing long enough about that, so why don't I actually get to talking about the build today? So we are currently on my Legacy of Nightmare Witch Doctor, as I stated before. And rather than running the Garg setup or the Fire Bat setup, I fooled around with the Fire Bat setup for a little while, and I wasn't super impressed with the numbers I was seeing. Also, the consistent need to cast Big Bad Voodoo, Rain Dance, and the fact that you were constantly monitoring your mana. That's just not my kind of playstyle, especially when they were talking about how you should use the Aquila Cuirass, and any of you who've used that particular item know that with certain rolls, you only have so much mana you can use before you lose that damage mitigation. And if you're in a higher Greater Rift and you lose that mitigation, then you may as well just bend over and die as far as the game's enemies are concerned. So that's a no. But I'm going to start with the skills, and then we will go over the gear as well as stuff in the Kanai Cube. I'll leave Paragon Points for the end because skill talk might take a little while, and you'll see what I mean when I get to it. Forgive me, I haven't changed my build in a minute. I was running Numbing Dart, but with me running a poison build, Snake to the Face is probably going to be a better choice for you, simply because the stun will keep enemies at bay long enough that you can maneuver around if they're too close, or it'll give your pets a chance to intercede between you and them. I'm running Summon Zombie Dogs, Rabid Dogs. I'm really happy about what they did to Summon Zombie Dogs in the last patch. In this patch rather. Last patch, this skill was atrocious. I think I remember them doing like 30% of damage, and it was at the point where it wasn't worth running Zombie Dogs, even if you had the Tall Man's Finger. And at that point, it wasn't really worth running Gargantuan, unless you were just like T10 farming and you wanted to use both the Tall Man and the Short Man's Fingers for the kicks of it. But now, Summon Zombie Dogs hits incredibly hard, and with Tall Man's Finger, obviously your dog does even more damage now that you've condensed them all into one. We're running Fetish Army with Headhunters for the Poison rune, since the only elemental damage we focus on in this build has been Poison. So it figures to just take advantage of that extra boost. Also, because Carnevil, now that it's been revamped, last patch I believe it was, to the point that it only shoots darts from your 5 closest fetishes. This makes it so that you have a guaranteed 7 fetishes who, in addition to you, will be shooting poison darts. And this is extra helpful considering you will then have 15 fetishes spawned from your Fetish Sycophant passive that will be doing melee damage. So all in all, it's just it's the best thing I can think of to put in this slot. We're using Soul Harvest Languish. This is for the intelligence boost along with the armor boost and the movement speed reduction. Oh, excuse me. Um, this pairs really well with the bracers that we're using, which I'll get into when I talk about the gear. I don't wanna overlap these sections too much, since I think I'm gonna put in the video. Um, I'm gonna section it. So if you're not so much a nitty gritty, like hear everything someone says about one section before moving to another kind of person, then you could skip through the like skill discussion and then the gear, with Kanai's cube, and then the passives, and then gameplay there at the end. We're running Spirit Walk Jaunt. I I can't think of any Witch Doctor who runs without this skill. This is literally your get out of jail free card. Um, I don't think I need to explain to you Witch Doctor players why you use Spirit Walk Jaunt. I use Jaunt simply because it gives us that 3 seconds, and sometimes the normal 2 seconds for Spirit Walk isn't enough time to get away from the affix or the enemies that you're surrounded by. So it's better to use Jaunt. I know some people who have apparently done well with Severance, but those people tend to be running they tend to be running just like T10 farming as opposed to Greater Rifts. And if you want to run T10 for like speed farming and whatnot, I think I don't remember his name. I'm sorry, but there are builds currently on YouTube about speed farming with the Witch Doctor, so you could certainly check those out if you're interested in that. We're running Big Bad Voodoo Slam Dance. Um, Increased attack and movement speed and increased damage, like just flat base damage, is never a terrible thing. I mean, that comes out. That's technically a 50% damage increase between the attack speed and your just the base damage increase. I know it doesn't come out to be exactly 50 since the way that attack speed is calculated is kind of weird. But just trust me, Big Bad Voodoo, incredibly helpful in this build. And because we're running what we're running in the cube, you can basically spam this however often that you want. For passives, we're running Pierce the Veil. All of your damage increased by 20%, but mana costs are increased by 30%. But as you can see from my skills, we are not running a mana spender. So that's just a base 20% damage buff. Now, here's where I'll differ from other people, because Anthony Evans seems to be a real fan of running Spirit Vessel here for the free life, basically. But honestly, with the way I've been running, and in my experiences I've been going through, Swampland Attunement is really, really helpful when you're getting just mobbed by enemies. I've also seen that Jungle Fortitude is not a terrible way to go about it. And if you're ballsy and you're running full poison like I am, if you're not running super high Greater Rifts, you may even be able to get away with running Bad Medicine here. since damage reduction from your opponents means that you live longer. It gives your pets more time to like beat up the other enemies, and so they don't die as quickly. And all in all, I like bad medicine, but I rarely ever use it. So those are really your choices. Jungle Fortitude if you want just that base damage reduction. Spirit Vessel if you think you want that spare life, since this does technically, for the most part, keep you safe from getting one shot by like elites or rift bosses. But for me, I think I'd say use Swampland Attunement. And this is, I put an asterisk, like a metaphorical asterisk next to that statement, because Swampland Attunement will only shine really, truly when you're in a high density rift. When you're constantly surrounded by enemies will be the time that you are most grateful for Swampland Attunement. Whereas if you're only fighting a few enemies at a time, its value may be a little less than, say, Spirit Vessel. But that's up to you guys. You can totally choose which of those you want to run. We're running Fetish Sycophants. I I have not had to run this passive in like a really long time, and I was kind of wondering why I couldn't get away with running, say, a Belt of Transcendence on my gear to take care of this summoning fetishes deal. But apparently that is not conducive if I'm going to want to be running higher rifts. But I'll get into that more when I show you my gear. Our fourth passive is Midnight Feast. Increases your zombie dog damage by 50%. Additionally, you have an additional zombie dog summoned. So rather than your tall man finger dog proccing off of 3 zombie dogs, as is the usual, you get 4 instead now. So that's really, really nice. For a fifth passive over here on the Hellfire Amulet, as you can see, which rolled really badly, by the way, but I needed an Ancient Hellfire, and this popped up after like 3 days of just straight keyboard and farming and Hellfire Amulet crafting, so I will take it for now. If I find a better one in the future, obviously I'll swap it out, but for now, something that I can roll extra critical hit damage on, that I have Confidence Ritual on, is perfect. You want that Confidence Ritual because it increases your damage by 25% to enemies that are within 20 yards of you. And 20 yards is roughly like from me to Squirt is definitely 20 yards. So long as you keep this much of it, well, it's not 20 yards exactly. Like, it's probably more than 20 yards given how the game works. But so long as you're within this much of a distance between you and a monster, your confidence ritual will be kicking in that extra damage. And that will be incredibly helpful. Oh, excuse me. It's quite late here, so I'm a bit tired. But for the gear, first of all, you're going to want the Carnevil. This is at its base a Carnevil build. It's just we've added the toxic zombie dog because of how much damage it does. Which, even with how unoptimized my gear is, the dog still hits really hard. Um, um, I believe that the best stats that you would want on this would be intelligence, vitality, critical hit chance, and then a socket so that you can put a health gem in there just for some more toughness and survivability. Um, Now, the shoulders that I am running are by no stretch of the imagination the ones you should be running. I had these left over from my Firebat days, and while they don't do much for me in terms of synchronicity with the build, it's an ancient item, and with Legacy of Nightmare, if it's ancient, it's good enough. We're gonna be running the Aquila Cuirass. I actually just found this. I'm really happy about having found this because I've spent literally the last week trying to find an ancient version of this fucking piece. And it was hell. It was literally hell. But I found it, so I'm good now. We want to run Tasker and Theo simply because um, of the secondary affix, which gives you increased attack speed for your pets. As you can see, I was that close to having the 50%. I do recall in non-season that I have a better pair of Tasker and Theos that I believe rolled the 50% damage increase. So I'm hopeful that when season finally does end, I'll be able to swap those and maybe I'll be a little bit better off. Um, we're running Lakumba's Ornament. This right here is the reason why we're running Soul Harvest, because it reduces our damage taken by 6% for each stack of Soul Harvest you have. Since we're not running, what do you call it? The Sacred Harvester, that's it. Since we're not running Sacred Harvester, so we don't have the 10 stacks of Soul Harvest and therefore the 60% damage reduction. Um, we have 5 stacks on Soul Harvest as is, so that's a 30% damage reduction. You're going to want to keep that active all of the time that you can manage, because with how high of rips we're going to be doing, any second that you're not at the full 5 stacks and any second that you're not running all of your damage reduction is time that you can get killed. And as we all know, getting killed in a Greater Rift is like the worst thing ever. For the belt, I'm currently running a Hellcat Waistguard. This is simply because I have not found an Ancient Witching Hour yet here in Seasonal. If I do find one, which I'm hopeful for, that's the next item on my that's the next item on my to-do list. We want the Witching Hour because it rolls attack speed and critical hit damage, which is always helpful. Always helpful. Um, Running Swamp Land Waders. As you can see, once again, just missed out on the max damage for the poison skill, but that's okay, because 19% poison damage is more than enough. This is just to help beef up all the poison related skills that we're doing. And for our boots, as you can see, these are not ancient. I'm still farming for an ancient pair of these boots. They just, they do not want to come to me, no matter what I seem to do. So we're just taking that in time. For the offhand, running the Eucapian Serpent. This contributes to our tankiness quite a bit. As you can see, you get between 25 and 30% damage reduction because they redirect the damage to your zombie dog, which, since you have a really powerful tanky dog that's taking that damage, it's damage you don't have to worry about. For the weapon, I'm running a Star Metal Kukri. I've been told that maybe attack speed would be a little better, and maybe I'll consider re-rolling attack speed on this in a little bit. I mean, I can afford the vitality drop, I think, with 1.3 million life. But I'm not running a dagger of darts on my character because the only dagger I found was not ancient, and I figured it was just I'd finally found one. I wasn't gonna waste time. So I cubed that. So Star Metal Kukri is what I'm running. This reduces the cooldown of Fetish Army and Big Bad Voodoo by 1 second every time your fetishes deal damage. Since you'll have up to 22 fetishes out, really what this comes down to is once you get the 15 fetishes from your sycophants, you will be able to pretty much cast Fetish Army every time you could think to want to cast it, which comes in handy since Fetish Army's on a 20-second timer, so you only have the army itself for 20 seconds before it goes away and you have to summon it again. And last but not least, I do have an Ancient Litany of the Undaunted. I'm really happy about this. I do not yet have an Ancient Wailing Host. I'm looking for that. The quest is never over, is it? But I'm thinking about re-rolling that critical hit chance to critical hit damage. Honestly, I don't think I will, since I need a little more critical hit damage, or critical hit chance rather. So I'll see where, if anywhere, I can get some of that critical hit damage, or critical hit chance rather. Sorry. So we'll see what we can do about that. Um, right, Kanai Cube. So in the cube, we're running the Dagger of Darts, so our darts pierce. We're running Mask of Jerem, just so all of your pets deal a little more damage. This is going to help since you yourself don't do a huge... Like, you do plenty of damage thanks to Legacy of Nightmares, but since I'm not running full Ancients, I'm getting a 1,100 um, percent damage increase, and with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So that equates out to 44% damage reduction from the litany right now. I will have 52 once I find ancients for these two pairs, but for now I'm content to wait on that. But remember that your pet's damage is multiplied also through the litany of the Undaunted, so they're hitting quite hard. And in our ring slot, we're running obviously the Tall Man's Finger, so we can get the single big old zombie dog. And this thing hits like a truck. It's not so noticeable once you get above like 60, and I'm assuming that's just because of where I am right now. I'm assuming as I Paragon more and more, I will see that dog doing more and more damage. Also, once I Caldas on some more pieces of my gear, get some more of that intelligence in there, I'm sure I'll be doing more damage. For Paragon Points, obviously, before you do anything, max out your movement speed, and then dump everything else in intelligence here in your core. For offense, I would go attack speed, critical hit chance, critical hit damage, and then cooldown reduction, since our most important cooldowns are being taken care of by Star Metal Kukri. So that can sit kind of on the back burner until you level up enough to max that out to the full 10%. In defense, I would recommend starting with Resist All, then Armor, Life, Life Regen, and then for your utility, area damage, resource, cost reduction doesn't matter too much since we're not spending any resource. So maybe focus on life on hit before that, and gold find and resource cost reduction on this build are kinda moot, so you don't really need to care about that. Let's see, so that's the skills, the gear, Kanai, Paragon. So I suppose the only thing left to do is to show you guys how the build fares. So I recently did a 63, so this will actually be, no, I just did a 64, but I wasn't super happy with the speed of the 64 run simply because of the map that I got. They gave me really spread out maps, and I hate spread out maps when you're trying to get that done. So let's try a 64, and hopefully I won't make a fool of myself and you guys can see a little bit of what I'm talking about. Oh, please don't be a shitty. Alright. It's not the greatest act to start in, but I'll take it. And had I not been running Swampland Attunement, that instant right there when I was mobbed by enemies probably would have died already. Like, that's what I was talking about when I was talking about how useful Swampland Attunement can be when you're getting just absolutely mobbed. Because the more enemies that are around, the more resistances that you get, which just bulks up your toughness to all get out, and it makes it so that you can be just super tanky, and especially in scenarios where you're so that I let my fetish army disappear there. You're not gonna want to do that. You want to keep Fetish Army and Big Bad Voodoo up as often as you can. So even if it feels like you're recasting Fetish Army before you have to, per se, I would rather be casting it ahead of time so that it doesn't run out at a time that I really need them to be running. And with me just constantly redoing that, it means I don't worry about them disappearing at a bad time, which is just a lot easier for me to deal with. When it comes to playing Carnevil, it was true back in the old patches, and it's true now. Your best friend is close quarters. And what I mean by this is, if you can get enemies closer together, then you can just slam everything, because everything gets hit by the piercing darts. And if they're closer together, it means that your darts are going to hit more enemies, which is never a bad thing. Never a bad thing. And if you, my general habit is, if you get teleported if you get teleported someplace by like an enemy affix, or you're just you're getting moved to maybe unfavorable positions because of how you're being placed because of the enemies, then I find it useful to just recast your pets. That way your enemies have your pets between you and them, and it makes it just a little bit easier for you to focus on firing your darts off, as opposed to avoiding your face getting smashed in by a nearby enemy. And remember, we have to stay close to the enemies simply because of confidence ritual. So it works in our favor to be close, but at the same time it kinda goes against my sensibilities as a witch doctor, since I'm so used to being super squishy. But we don't really have that problem with this build, thanks to all the different sources of damage reduction that we have. So that is really nice. I do enjoy that a lot. And the damage for this build is just, it's amazing. Like, you guys see that I'm not even running full ancients, but the speed with which you can kill off high health enemies is definitely noticeable. The only thing I think I can say it has problems with in terms of kill speed are those enemies with just like oodles of health. You know, the ones with like the extra health passive, or with the extra health affix rather. Or mostly the biggest problem I usually have in terms of doing things in a timely manner tends to revolve around arcane enemies. I absolutely hate arcane enemies. Like, they have always been and will probably always be the bane of my existence, since it's not like you can run something like Countess Julia's cameo with the stuff that you need to run for this build to work. So, I mean, so definitely watch out. I can't say that any elemental affix is really less problematic, shall we say. If you are not careful, you will get messed up by pretty much any elemental affix in the game, whether it be poison or fire or whatever. It's definitely possible for you to get killed by those affixes. It's less of a problem when you're in really thick groups, since your swampland attunement is obviously giving you a little bit of respite from that. So I would say, if you feel like you don't have enough density and you feel like your health bar is getting really low, I would just run around and maybe group up some enemies if you feel it's absolutely necessary. just get yourself some more density, and that way Swampland Attunement can really do its job, and you can stand in the thick of things and not really worry about your life. Since I recall that at times running Swampland Attunement, my toughness has jumped up all the way to like 350 million, and that's quite a bit of toughness for a witch doctor. That's quite a lot of toughness for any class, really, but especially on a witch doctor, who I'm not used to having that much toughness on. It's definitely a sight to see. Mortars. Mortars and Arcane are a really, really crappy pair of affixes to have to deal with. But if you just hold out, you'll be alright. And the best thing, the thing I really like about Carnevil is with how we focus on ranged attacks, even if I have to retreat a little bit to get some distance between us, I never have a worry about reach. I always know that I'm gonna be able to hit my enemies, and that makes it really, really easy to get content when you're running through with close and knit enemies. But always remember that you're not always going to get super dense mobs, and there will be times that you'll face singular opponents. There's a pylon over here. Ooh, power pylon. And so when you're facing single opponents as opposed to like mobs, I would recommend that you keep a bit of your distance. After all, that's what your pets are here for. Pets are for getting up close and personal, while you can just sit back and deal with the enemies from a distance. Or you can be like me and tempt fate by getting up close and personal with the enemies. This is also another reason why I really like Snake to the Face. That stun makes it so that even when I'm standing up close and personal to an enemy, I don't have to worry so much about them taking cheap shots at me, since the stun will last long enough that I can even strike them if pets can. Rift Guardian. Here it is. Veracity this time. Alright. Recast Fetish Army. But as you can see, his health bar it drops so quickly. And there we go. Rank 64 with a personal best time. Beat my last time by like 2 minutes. But that is quite good. That is a very, very powerful thing we have there. I think I'm gonna... Ooh. I'll try once more. Alright. No Enforcer upgrade then. We'll upgrade Simplicity's Strength a couple times, I think. Yeah. Just to get us that extra Poison Dart damage. And that's... God, I feel like such a scrub. I think that's something I neglected to mention earlier. Legendary gems. Simplicity's Strength Bane of the Stricken, and Enforcer. If you don't, I've also seen people instead of Bane run Bane of the Trapped, and in that case, you could either keep using Snake to the Face, or you could change it to a Numbing Dart, the Cold Rune. Completely up to you. But that, ladies and gentlemen, is the Legacy of Nightmares Toxic Hound build. And as you can see, it's significantly powerful. We ran through that 64 with relatively little issue and no deaths. Did you see that? Didn't die once. So it's definitely powerful. It's definitely a build that you could probably consider running if it looks like it's your style. I know a lot of people are still tired from Carnevil, from when it was like the de facto what we had to run. One final question that I did get on my stream the other day was, do I think Zunimasa and its version of the Carnevil build is okay to run? And in response to that, I would say the failing with Zunimasa, aside from the fact that Legacy of Nightmares just gives so much more damage, and it's a constant damage as opposed to the 800% increase for like 8 seconds that Zunimasa does. Zunimasa requires that you run a mana spender in addition to your poison darts if you're running Carnevil with Zunimasa. And it throws off the rhythm so much when you're having to alternate between a mana spender and a mana generator. So I would say if you're running Zunimasa, don't run Carnevil. I've currently got a setup going in which I have the full pet set up, and I'm running Wilkins Reach. So I'm running one of these so that Grasp of the Dead has no cooldown anymore on my Zunimasa. And then I'm running the very first rune of Grasp of the Dead, which where is it here? Here it is. So Unbreakable Grasp removes the mana cost and slows enemies by 80%. So basically what that amounts to, and how I run it on my Zuni Witch Doctor, was I would just spam the ever-loving hell out of Grasp of the Dead, and then let my pets do a majority of the damage. I think I switched over to a Helltooth set instead now, because frankly the dog and the guard do more damage through the Helltooth set than the Zunimasa set. But I'm getting off topic as to the subject of this video. So those are probably videos that I'll go over in the next couple of days. So I'll talk about Helltooth and Zunimasa in their own video. But this was the Legacy of Nightmares Witch Doctor for the Toxic Hound build. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope it's been informative for you. If you did enjoy the video, if you like what I am doing, and if you wish to see more, you can subscribe below. I always love seeing new subscribers. It makes me feel really good people show me that they are interested in what I'm trying to do. And what I'm trying to do is bring more attention to Diablo and my own personal flair, because I know that how I do things isn't always the way that like the other pros do it. And I mean, I'm a new professional, not a noob professional, a new professional. So I've been making videos for a while, but it hasn't ever been anything like high maintenance. So if you like what you see, subscribe below. You can comment, definitely like the video if it helped you out. Um, I will post the link to my Twitch, as I said earlier in the video, in the link below. So if you're interested in subscribing to that so that you can catch me on stream, you can certainly do that. And until I see you next time, I am the Movie Cuban, and I am signing out. Legacy of Nightmares, who knew? Oh, God.